hundreds of these young people who were there in the festival, and you have this burst of people getting out of one of the worst mega prisons in the world. What did you expect would happen in this encounter? A dialogue of peace. Nothing justifies or doesn't justify, doesn't matter. It's just I'm saying this was not part of the plan. They didn't know about the festival. They were really surprised when they found all these people there. This is it will take time. I think with due course we will have a fuller picture. But I would like to distinguish, of course, between the effects on the ground on that particular day, which are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but should never confuse it with the big picture. What I'm describing on the day itself are the symptoms of violence. They're not the origin of violence. The origins of violence is what we are trying to do as historians, to understand it. Of course, it gets out of hand. Things are happening on both sides. And I think the picture becomes clear. Also, the picture of how many of these young people were killed by the Israeli army itself, which Israel is trying to hide. But we know that large number, I don't have the figure, but large number of them were by the Israeli army itself. In order to prevent, it's called the Hannibal process in Israel, the Hannibal procedure. You don't want the other side to take hostages. So it's much better to kill them than making them hostages that complicates the reality afterwards. I'm not saying that we have a full picture. We still don't have. But we have a far better picture today than we had, let's say, a year after.
Omar Batok said yesterday that he it was 800. He gave a figure of 800. I don't know where he got that from, but
yeah, 800 were killed by the Israeli themselves.
No, the 800 were killed by invading, forces.
I see. Yeah,
and the other, 400 whatever, were, probably quadcopters, etc. But just on the setup to fail of Oslo and the pretext mentality of Israel, and now worsening situation, impunity on the West Bank, Ilan. Ranjan has come up with the, free Marwan Barghouti as a kind of
I saw it.
pain that might be a breaker, a groundbreaker, a circuit breaker. And I was looking at the history of when it became a real global campaign, with, of course, in the South African case. What do you think could persuade the Arab nations to join, and European nations as well, to join a real tough sanction program against Israel? Is there something that could really jolt the conscience of Arab nations and break through the hypocrisy of normalization, or would it be something like a campaign to free a potential leader or some sort of,
yeah. And then we'll move to Junaid. First of all, the very disturbing news is that the PA itself was pressuring not to allow Marwan Barghouti to be released. That was the message to the Americans from the PA. Understandably, they don't want a competition. And the Arab leaders would follow the PA on this right now. So I think that it's a matter of the overall problem we have in the gap between what civil societies want and political leaders are willing to do. And the gap is still very wide. So I don't think you can dissociate a change in the political elites in the West and in the Arab world towards Palestine and their position, let's say, on Marwan Barghouti. I think it's totally connected. And what we learned from the case of New York and other places is that eventually we have to make sure that it's an electoral issue. It's an electoral issue. Namely, it would benefit you electorally as a politician. And it doesn't matter whether you are in a democracy in the West or in a non-democratic country in the Arab world. Also, the leaders of the Arab world needs legitimacy, And if it will become an issue of legitimacy, then I think this would change. So I think I don't know. People probably are not aware how much there are solidarity movements with the Palestinians in the Arab world. Just the other day, one of the leading pillars of such a movement in Morocco unfortunately died. He was attacked. I don't know by whom, violently attacked, and he died later from his wounds. I don't know who beat him up, but he was leading. And but the solidarity movement with Palestine in Morocco continues, in Tunis, in Algeria, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain. So I think it's this ability to create this global pressure, not just locally but globally, and be inspired by the countries where it's already happening, like Brazil, Colombia, certain extent in Spain. And I totally support the campaign, but I don't see it will be possible without a basic change. I mean, it won't be possible to disseparate it. I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see Marwan out of jail as soon as possible. By the way, on the 11th of December, I'm participating with Mariam Barghouti in an event in Amsterdam. So we are part of this campaign and so on. Um, but I was surprised by what I heard from my American friends who there was a willingness, by the way, by Trump to demand the release of Marwan Barghouti. He was convinced that it could be beneficial, and then he heard that actually there's no much. It's not something either the Israelis or the Palestinians want at that moment, which is very disturbing. I don't know how much is true. I don't have my own sources, so I don't want to make allegations that are not totally founded. I'm saying that what I'm hearing. I hope it's not true on the Palestinian side, at least. But that's what I feel. Yeah, Junaid, maybe we'll go to you.
Yes, thank you, Ustad Dilan. And just bouncing off of Ranjan Bhai's earlier question and your response to it in terms of having a historical perspective on the intifadas. So, despite the, as you're well aware of, the right of return uh, protests and demonstrations, which nonviolent, the other intifadas after the first one are always pointed to as these violent intifadas, therefore the violent and completely vacuous response by the Israelis towards negotiation. While the first intifada comes back to this discourse, it was largely nonviolent from the Palestinian side, sustained over now 4 years. Um, and they point to that as being the central factor in at least bringing the Israelis to the negotiating table in Madrid and Oslo, whatever the sham Oslo became. However, I was wondering the other factor that seemed to have been at play there was U.S. pressure on Israel, both what one can discern under both Reagan and George Bush the senior. So I just wanted to ask, in your view, what was the main factor in the first Intifada's ability to at least get the Israelis to some
Yeah,
negotiating table?
yeah. I'm not sure how much the pressure from the outside. I know I speak also from intimate knowledge. In 1992, I still hoped that maybe something like Oslo would be positive, but when it started, I already left the team and became a very ardent critic of the process. But what I understood, there was less of pressure from the outside as much as, and that's so tragic in a way. Uh, the local leadership in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip began to impress, especially the senior Bush administration, that they are very serious people. If you read, which I did, the reports of the American delegation from the Madrid conference, they're highly impressed by Faisal Husseini, Haidar Abdel Shafi from Gaza, Hanan Ashrawi, the teams in Orient House. They say these are really impressive people. They can really build a state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. This is really something we should support. And then the lobby, of course, did a counterattack on the senior Bush senior administration, saying, no, you can't But there was this danger that actually the leadership in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip would become the blue-eyed boys of the Americans. And there is this PLO that is totally broken, delegitimized in the Arab world in 1992 because of the stupid support Arafat gave to Saddam Hussein, right? The fall of the Soviet Union. That's how the Israelis work. They look at the Palestinian map and say, the people in the West Bank are legitimized. They have the support of the people. The PLO doesn't have, it's not the same PLO, it's a weakened, a very, very weak kind of PLO. It's much better to talk to them and mesmerize them with all kinds of supports. And I think that was the motivation. It took me time to realize. I mean, at first I was like everyone else. I thought, oh my God, they really want to make peace with the PLO. I was a one-stater, but I said, okay, let's give a chance to two states, anything to end the terrible occupation. And then it was very clear, and I needed someone like Edward Said to open my eyes. He said, no, listen, this is not a genuine a wish to reconcile. This is actually to circumvent a Palestinian leadership that says, okay, you're serious about two states? Okay, we're serious about two states. And the Israelis were never serious about two states. They used the discourse, but they never meant for it to happen, right? Even the liberal Zionists never thought about a real state next to Israel. So I think that's what happened. And then they found this incredible outfit in Oslo, FAFO, the research center for that belonged to the Norwegian trade unions. And FAFO had a very bad record in solving conflicts. It's quite amazing that they present themselves as someone. Of course, the Israelis chose us because we were known to solve conflict. They didn't contribute to one conflict in the world. In fact, they ruined every attempt that they were part of it. But what really attracted them to Israel was their philosophy that peace means that you take the minimum that the occupier is willing to give to the occupied and you force it on the occupied. And the Israelis like that approach, which is not the approach that Faisal Hosseini and the leadership in the West Bank wanted. They wanted to be regarded as equal partners in these negotiations. And so they built together with FAFO, this institute in Oslo, this idea that the late Yitzhak Rabin used to call, without understanding algebra, never mind, he called it N+1, which is something different. What he meant that we offer the Palestinians something a little bit better from what they have, and they would take it, because people would take something which is a bit better, even if it's only a bit better, as he puts it. He has a famous speech in the Knesset where he tries to explain what Oslo is all about. Now, first of all, in reality, it proved out to be not better, but much worse. Life for people after Oslo was far worse than life for people before Oslo. And secondly, that's not, of course, a way to end colonization and occupation. But I don't think the Americans, by the way, were not part of the negotiations in Oslo. They came out afterwards. Also, Rabin was not part of it. It was done behind the back of Rabin to begin with. It was a kind of, it was a typical liberal Zionist methodology of how to have occupation by other means. Hopefully, they would look liberal and democratic. And I think that what happens. And, Palestinians are now far more aware of all of this. And there is a much healthier rejection of any such. I don't think it will be possible to have another Oslo. That will never happen again. I'm sure about that. Yeah.
Thanks, Ustad.
Thank you.